Hello everybody and welcome to Astro Pillars Astrology. We're going to talk about the eclipse season coming up on the 17th of the 2nd, 2026. It's a season annular solar eclipse in Aquarius. And firstly, I just want to thank everyone for my up and coming dates of birth that you've sent in, because I'm going to do a year of the Yang Fire Horse live. So I've got plenty of dates of birth for people who want the rundown of the annual lunar Yang Fire Horse year according to your personal Bazi 4 Pillars Chinese astrological chart, the 4 Pillars of Destiny. That will be coming up. I'll be doing a live on the 15th of the 2nd on that Sunday evening, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And wow, this is a time that I think things are going to really take off this year on so many levels. But I'm only going to talk about the annular solar eclipse coming up in Aquarius. Of course, it's followed by a lunar eclipse in the sign of Virgo, but I'll do a separate video on that. And I'm just going to talk about kind of general things based on one of my Substacks articles I wrote. And I am not going to go through the 12 signs. I will save that a bit later on, closer to the date of the new moon in Aquarius at that time. So let's just kick it off, because it all kicks off right in the Yang Fire Horse Lunar New Year, which I think is very, very interesting. And I'm going to do a separate video on the Yang Fire Horse year. I've already done one. It's a little bit more personal, but I'm going to do one based on historical significance, because in Chinese astrology, they follow the sexagenary cycle, which is a 60-year cycle. And it's very interesting. I've been looking to what's been coming up in the last 60 from 1966 to 1906, going back in history and seeing the events. And wow, I mean, we could be in for a big one, I think, coming up this year. But anyway, what are eclipses? Because when eclipse hits our personal charts, then something's eclipsed, something gets revealed to us, right? Something that's hidden. So according to ancient astrologers, right, eclipses were negative events, but they cause tragic conditions, right? And certain existing things come to an end, right? Eclipses can be about endings, and they tend to bring a lot of stress and problems, right? This is how ancient mundane astrologers will look at things. But modern astrologers tend to perceive eclipse as a chance for rapid changes and development. So according to modern astrology, right, eclipses give us energy, the energy we need to make the changes we want. So as shocking as they are and dramatic as they are and surprising they can be, particularly if they hit one of the 4 angles in a chart, that being ascendant, descendant, the IC and the MC, right? Or personal planets, or anything that falls into the degree of the eclipse. So we've got a 28 degrees eclipse in Aquarius. So if you've got 28 degrees anywhere in your chart, that being a planet or the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, or the IC, then, or any of the cusp of the 12 houses, then strap yourselves in, because it's going to be pretty significant for you. This is why it's always good to keep track of your own personal birth natal chart, right? But so eclipses give light to things we cannot see, and it's good to pay attention to where they fall, like I said, in our birth natal chart. And they can give us, we can get intuitive insights into how they're going to play out for us, right? So everything in life happens for a reason, even if the matters are complicated and appears stressed out, it seems to stress us on the surface, right? Eclipses are designed to bring better things to our lives. And progress obviously cannot be achieved in life without change. So eclipses force us to give up certain things or act differently than before, which can be painful but necessary for growth. So being aware of eclipses, like I said, we may realize that better things may come to our lives, and we may minimize the effects of any possible crisis. So it's like everything in astrology, it's always good to, because charts are important, that being Chinese, planetary, or even Vedic, whatever flavor you like, it's good to keep tabs on where things are falling, right? Because then we can strap ourselves in and we can pay attention to what the potential outcome of these things can be. And and this is why astrology is so important, right? Because we can plan our lives around things. And we can look to see what could potentially be coming up, right? But eclipses begin manifesting their effects a few months before they occur, usually, right? And their effects can continue to be a few months afterwards. So astrologers hold the view that lunar eclipses are effective for 6 months afterwards, right? While solar ones are effective for at least 1 year. But more accurately, right, on the duration of eclipse, some astrologers claim that the influence will last long. Like, so for example, if a lunar eclipse lasts 6 hours, its influence will be the following 6 months. And the same with the solar eclipses. If the solar eclipse lasts for 2 hours, its effects will be for the next 2 years. So it's always just not, okay, the eclipse is coming now, this is how it's going to play out. It plays out over duration of time. So solar eclipses, which we're about to experience, have a powerful influence as they occur close to the Earth. They are beneficial for identifying new goals and leaving old patterns behind. So they are useful for starting new ventures. So both the luminaries, that being the sun and moon, are in the same sign at this point, right? So the features of the sign are highly emphasized, right? So this annual solar eclipse is in the sign of Aquarius, and Aquarius energy is going to be taken to the next level, right? And annular eclipses are obviously not total eclipses. The moon still covers the sun, but the moon appears smaller than the sun from the Earth. So the ring and of light surrounds the moon. Now, in the next talk, I'll talk about the lunar eclipse, but I'll throw this in just at the moment because lunar eclipses emphasize emotional themes, right? So these periods are suitable for taking care of our emotional life, our inner life, sanitizing our psyche, looking into how we can potentially, what can come up psychologically, and how we can process this in a healthy way. So taking care of one's emotion, completing unfinished projects and unnecessary things, leaving unnecessary things behind. So ancient astrologers actually believed that lunar eclipses were more malefic, right? As they awakened irrational responses, which they will trigger the shadow. So as the moon represents the family, the mother, the home, and emotional issues, lunar eclipses trigger inner changes as compared to solar ones. So they can also bring insecurity in our own private lives. So it's, in a way, when the lunar eclipses hit, it's good to avoid making important decisions at this time, as maintaining emotional balance may be difficult. So you want to make sure you process whatever comes to the surface, and particularly when it comes to the shadow of the psyche, which is a really kind of, popular term now, I guess. But, all shadow stuff really means is just move emotion when you're actually in it in a healthy and coherent way, or as best you can, right? Without repressing or suppressing what we're feeling, because then obviously when we do that, it can harm us psychologically and we can project it out into the world, and then we can get, as Jung says, right, when we don't process it, it's going to manifest in 2 ways, fate or pathology, take your pick. So anyway, the annular solar eclipse coming up in Aquarius is at 28 degrees. So eclipses in Aquarius can bring, right, and we've already experienced this, I'm down here in Australia, right? So I don't know, in the northern hemisphere, but we're in summer season down here. And obviously northern hemisphere is up in winter, so wherever you are in the world, which hemisphere, it's going to play out differently, particularly with the weather patterns, because eclipses in fixed air can, in any air sign really, but fixed air can bring, you know, really strong winds, which we've already experienced, destructive winds. There can be barometric shifts, electrical storm, freezes, ice, you know, within the month, but it's already played out here, because down here in Australia, right, I'm at the bottom, I'm in Victoria, Melbourne, and excuse me, we've already experienced extremely strong winds. There's a lot of cool air presence in the air, and Aquarius is fixed air, right, so it's cold. It's ruled by the planet Saturn. So, I mean, the modern ruler is Uranus, so there's two kind of flavors to it, but primarily it's got that Saturnian signature to it. So we can feel this cold air in it's almost kind of feeling like autumn. I mean, we're having hot days, but there's a cool presence in the air, which a lot of people experience. So the effects of eclipses in fixed signs tend to be more long lasting, right? So obviously, like I said, the weather's going to be different depending on which hemisphere you're in. But, excuse me, but we've already experienced. And it's interesting, because I would just say, like, Aquarius rules electricity. So it's important, because electrical power outages can be typical with this eclipse. So back up your computers or all electrical data. I highly recommend that. And I've already experienced, you know, I've been doing a lot of writing and recording things, and it almost feels like we're in a retrograde period with, you know, with the tech at the moment. It's quite interesting. Things are slowing down. I've noticed some people, I've sent emails, I haven't been getting them, all this kind of thing. But important to back up important data at this time, right? And especially with all eclipses in Aquarius, minimize electromagnetic exposure, as the effects of this will be amped up. Now, I did a cell salt astrology. You know, a lot of people know probably on my channel that I've done a cell salt astrology video on potassium chloride, Kali Myrrh, which is, you know, for those who are electromagnetic sensitive, you really want to dose up highly on this cell salt. You can listen to my cell salt talk on this. It's called Cell Salts and Electricity. I'll link the video in there if you guys haven't listened to this, but I would say with this Aquarius eclipse, we're going to have this this greater awareness of how electromagnetic pollution really affects us on a physiological level and psychological level coming up. So this eclipse, obviously, it's square to Taurus, right? So it can stimulate earthquakes. Taurus is the earth, so it's in a difficult angle. And obviously the stock market generally can swing wildly near this event, right? And we've already, if people are into the precious metals, which I am, I mean, it's incredible how silver's just skyrocketed up. So these kind of eclipses, the crypto always swings up and down, right? But that's ruled by the planet Uranus, so there's huge instability in that. You know, sudden changes, quick changes, shifting. But the precious metals has been fascinating to watch the last 6 months, that's for sure. So for those of you who are into that, this is an interesting time. So, and anyway, so the stock market will swing wildly near this event, right? And it's already happening. So we can expect, excuse me, a downturn later in the year in the market, particularly when the North Node enters Aquarius. Now, this is really important. A lot of financial astrologers know about this. I'm not a major expert on this, but my father's a financial astrologer, so I'm always kind of on tabs with this. But we know, or a lot of people know who are schooled up on this, that when your North Node hits in Aquarius, then we're at the bottom of the cycle, the financial cycle. So just everyone, you know, be prepared for this, because this is coming up for 2026. Not to mention, obviously, around this eclipse too, we have Neptune in conjunction to, which happens on the 14th of the 2nd. Neptune is in complete conjunction with Saturn, the epidemic aspect in 0 degrees Aries. So that's the world point. So things are going to play out on a worldwide scale. So this is another monumental time. And I would advise everyone to really, really keep on top of their health at this point. Alternative medicine is just, you can't even call it alternative. It's just using your brain. Have all those fantastic medical treatments out there: acupuncture, herbal medicine, flower essences, cell salts, whatever it is that tickles your fannies, energetic medicine. It's really important to take responsibility for health now. Not to mention, in our cooked country, Australia, the low-level government going for another gun grab, which is no surprise, because 30 years ago, when Saturn was ingressed into the planet Aries, is when the Port Arthur incidents happened. Now, 30 years later, they're going for another gun grab again. It's just, wow. I'm trying to level it down a little bit, but it's imbecilic to say the least. But this is where we are in this country. Anyway, Aquarius is a sign of humanity, and there can be it's a sign of humanity. It rules humanity. So I think, this can stimulate a lot of things, like the diversity is championed, right, which the governments are really pushing, as well as welfare concerns, women rights, child welfare concerns, education, liberation, this kind of thing. So we can expect discoveries with electronics, space, things will speed up, as well as the UAP activity, unidentified aerial phenomena is what they call it now, is increasingly big time in mainstream media, right? And it's interesting because the Yang Fire Horse year rules things in the sky, right? The literal translation of that I mentioned on my video is the sun and moon light up the sky. So there's going to be a lot of activity and phenomena happening in the heavens above, I think, for 2026 with the Fire Horse. I'll talk about that on my different video I'm going to do on that. But there can be huge government changes at this time, right? The presidents, prime ministers, and dictators, this kind of thing. So non-profit organization, left-wing politics will be strongly stimulated at this time. LGBT community, as well as other groups seeking equal representation, want their voices heard a lot more. I mean, they're getting a lot of airtime these days, but this is going to really come out, I think, on another level. Aquarius can stimulate extremes in radicalization, so it's important to really stay balanced, right? So on a mundane level, right, this eclipse falls into the third decan of Aquarius, right? So in the old mundane astrology books, this decan is connected to the death and slaughter of sheep and beasts of the field, right? And I've been working up in the country lately, but any farmer will tell you what's happening around the world when it comes to cattle, especially from that last eclipse in April 2023 that fell into Aries in the third decan, which directly connected to the destruction of cattle, which is happening and not reported at all. So the third decan of Aquarius is the seven of Aquarius, right, in the tarot, which is the seven of swords. Its frequency is the moon, like the moon expressing itself through the sign of Aquarius. This card it can be extremely sinister, right? So I think there's very good positives to it, but a lot of the time, judging from the level of consciousness floating out there, which is still pretty much medieval, it's one of the most difficult cards to understand. It's connected to cleverness and intuitive human understanding, novel ideas, genius, eccentricity, right? Independence and creative imaginations are the key factors to this card. And I know a few personal people who are ruled by this card, and they have extremely unusual personalities. It's quite an interesting thing to observe. But having said that, right, the sinister side of this card is that there is something elusive around it. It's very cold and impersonal. There's connected to deception, fraud, lies, clandestine activities, a lack of conscience, enemies posing as friends, dangerous behavior, not to mention intuitive cleverness, right, reverting to cunning behavior. And what I feel about this, and what I can see, particularly from the chart of my country, the chart of Australia, when this eclipse is actually falling into our 10th house as a country, I mean, we're going to have some big things happen within government. I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but I mean, any eclipse in the 10th house, they will say that it's unfortunate for monarch and government. There's going to be unpopularity, discontent, discredit, dissensions, or death. And they also say that the trade and the credit of the country suffer, and the forces of law and authority are weakened in some way. And I think this is what's going to happen, because I think the people have had enough. And this is the beauty of the sign of Aquarius, as extremely eccentric it is the sign of humanity. And I think communities and things like this are going to sniff out the level of corruption going on, because it's pretty obvious now. Maybe not to some, but God, if you haven't got the memo by now, I don't know when you will. So it is interesting, but let's just go. I'm going to talk about the Sabian symbol, because I think Sabian symbols are critical. They're very cryptic, but they give us they help us walk the crooked roads of imagination, like what William Blake would say, right? Life's not black and white, so we have to use our imagination, our right brain, right? Because that's the ancestral mind, that's the driver. And I think the Sabian symbols are beautiful for this, because even though they seem a little bit cryptic, they give us something to mull over on these kind of degrees that the eclipses fall on. So this Sabian symbol associated with this eclipse is the butterfly emerging, right? So the key word is emanation. The theme is metamorphosis. So this symbol speaks to the curiosity and man's quest for knowledge. The image of the butterfly emerging from chrysalis symbolizes transformation and renewal, or a rebirth in a new form. So the accent is on unfoldment, changes in the air. Things are likely to start moving to the next level or stage in a situation. The opportunity is your greatest advantage lies in being willing to let go of the safe and familiar, and allow yourself to enjoy the freedom to create and experiment with new ways of living or doing things. The risk is to guard against failing to pay attention to what is going on around you, or missing the obvious cues that things have changed. Don't wake up too late and to be able to do something about a situation, or miss the chance to capitalize on a new opportunity. So it's really telling us to pay attention to what the hell is actually really going on. Not just, don't pay attention to words, pay attention to actions, and don't wake up to what is really going on before it's actually too late. Right? And I think, and this is important to understand, right? Because this eclipse in Aquarius, I think, is going to really bring out more so that Pluto energy of Pluto ingressing into Aquarius, which it did a few years ago. I think this eclipse is going to really bring something out into the forefront. And Pluto rules metamorphosis. Just something for people to mull over there. But like I said before, if anyone has 28 degrees in their birth natal chart, that being personal planets or the 4 angles in your chart, like I mentioned before, then this eclipse will have a powerful effect. Now, as most people know, most of my listeners, I'm a practitioner of Chinese medicine, and primarily I'm studied astrology because I'm interested in medical astrology and things like this. So the medical side of things is really important to me, and I think it's really important for people to get a grasp of their natal charts so they can understand it better as well. So, but in medical astrology, eclipses in Aquarius will affect obviously the cardiovascular system and the blood circulation. So Uranus rules the planet Aquarius, which rules the pulse. So in Chinese medicine, right, we take the pulse. It's really important because why? Because the pulse reflects organ function. It reflects where pain's in the body. It reflects the nature of your psyche. And it holds trauma, the blood. So we can read what's going on a really deep level with what's going on. And the pulse will pick up subtleties that technology cannot pick up if you're really fine-tuned and are really aware of what the pulse is actually telling you. So Aquarius is the planet that rules the pulse, right? Why? Because the pulse can change suddenly. And sudden changes in pulses, like you can get irregular, knotted or hasty pulses that are really affected from the planet Uranus. I've paid close attention to this with my patients. But they're the pulses, right, where the pulse skips beats at regular intervals or irregular intervals. So they call them irregular, knotty, or hasted pulses. There's 28 different pulse types in Chinese medicine. But these are the key ones that cause this irregularity of the rhythm, pulse rhythm. So I think Chinese medicine practitioners particularly need to be aware of this because, these eclipses, right, we may experience, these pulses more frequently at this time. And Chinese medical, the cell salts that stabilize the pulse, right? And I'll pull it in this way because a lot of, obviously, people don't know a lot about Chinese medicine, but for your own take on this kind of thing or cultivative health practices, then cell salts that stabilize the pulse rhythm are Kali, Phos, and Nat Mer. Now, Nat Mer rules the sign of Aquarius, so it's really important. If your pulses are regular or erratic, then you dose up on this, right? Acupuncture and bloodletting treatments are extremely, especially the bloodletting, extremely beneficial for stabilizing the pulse. And for those who throw it in, everyone goes, oh yeah, use leeches and this kind of thing. The Chinese ancient Taoists had all these zones all over the body. There's a number of different reasons for bloodletting zones. It's not medieval consciousness, it's wisdom. I'll just throw that in there as well. When you understand what blood is really doing and what it really does. So anyway, and speaking of eclipses, right, the eclipse between waves, right, so when it starts in the solar and then followed by the lunar, that 2-3 week period in between, the Earth magnetic field's really unstable. This is where you want to avoid elective surgery and things like this, right, because things can go wrong. But of course, you've got to expect the biorhythms of the bodies to change at this point. This is where people can be extremely tired. The pulse and the blood is not moving as well, and it will be more so like this because of what Aquarius rules. So there's all these factors to consider, right? So we are the microcosm and the macrocosm, as above, so below. Medicine is not being a left brain. So I'll just throw that in. But other areas of the body that need to be considered around this are the calves, the ankles, the heart, and the back. The reflex zones are important to pay attention to, right? What that means is Aquarius opposes Leo. So Leo, the sign of Leo, is going to cop a flogging too, potentially, if your body's out of balance. So at this time, Leo rules, what does it rule? The upper back and the heart. This can cause arrhythmias and back pain. Blood pressure issues, if you suffer from these, or particularly stroke, transient ischemic attacks, things like this, then you need to be very mindful. If you've had one of these, to be really careful at this time, right? So cultivate your health, have the acupuncture, this kind of thing. I'm biased, I love acupuncture, this is my practice. I know how good it is, it's incredible. So just be mindful of that. Aquarius is a nervous sign, right? It has a tendency to be extremely highly strung if imbalanced. It can really wire people up in a crazy way. The tension that can come from the stress of Aquarius and anxiety can be very extremely uncomfortable. So be mindful of this if this is how you operate. It can make you very sensitive to sound. Noise can be heightened, as well as sensitivity to electromagnetic radiation and fields. So those with Shen disorders, Shen in Chinese medicine is the spirit, the heart is the mind. The Shen is housed in the heart. All organs in Chinese medicine have souls, right? So, and one of them is Shen in the heart. The Shen is the imperial self, our sovereign ruler, right? And this is why in ancient Chinese medicine, they only used the pericardium channel, because the heart meridian developed later, but the pericardium was the heart protector. And if you had, but you know, the ancient Chinese guys said, well, you can't do heart points because you had no right to invade what's in someone's heart, because the heart is sovereign territory. And I agree with that. It is. You can't touch that space. But those with these kind of Shen disorders, which means psychological problems, nervous dispositions, or mental disorders, will need calming at this point. Excuse me. During this eclipse. And grounding will be required, right? So really, really important to pay attention to the body and how health is affected at this time. But so I mentioned the eclipse between waves, which is going to be the exact time. The eclipse starts 17th of the 2nd, 2026 until the 3rd of the 3rd to 26. That's when the eclipse is going to be being between waves. So it's going to be a highly unstable time. So I would say just back everything up with your computers, all this kind of thing. Be mindful of this. Avoid surgery, as the Earth, during this time, the Earth magnetic field's unstable. And next time, in my next videos in a few weeks, I'll do one on the lunar eclipse. And thanks to everyone for sending me their birth data for the Year of the Horse live event. I'm looking forward to going through that. That's going to be really cool. And I actually didn't expect so many birth dates, so I've got a few. I'll do my best to get through everyone. So stay tuned and keep your body in good nick around this time. So make sure you're cultivating your health and keep yourself balanced, and we will speak soon. And I'll have the links below, especially to my cell salt talk on how to prevent electromagnetic pollution, you know, this kind of thing, and look after yourself on that level with the cell salt potassium chloride. Thank you for listening, guys. I appreciate it.